Sahana vavatu, Sahana bhunaktu, Saha viryam karavavai, Tejasvinavaditam astu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cover with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So, of all the difficulties that we have, I think it was Swami Vivekananda who said, if I were to look for a Satan, I would look for him in the ego. And what that means is that the whole drive in spirituality is about removing obstacles. It's one of the reasons why in Hinduism, a prayer is started normally, or a ritual is started normally, with looking at the form of Ganesha or some representation of that. Even Om is the sound symbol that expresses itself in anthropomorphic form as Ganesha, a removal of obstacles. So the first position we have to take is that our nature is pure and free and full, but we don't know it because some layers of ignorance are on the top of it. Some obstacles are there that have to be overcome. I am a great supporter of the South African rugby, of course, and I was delighted to see the result of the World Cup yesterday. Managed to get hold of access to it. Very exciting game. But of course, as I point out very often, a game is not a game unless there are obstacles. Now, the ego, of course, is a difficult obstacle because we are encouraged to develop it when we are very small. And the idea of self-consciousness develops by the age of probably 1 or 2. Maybe even earlier, a child looks in a mirror and recognizes itself. So we have this sense of individuality, and it is an operational sense. In other words, we cannot do without it. So you ask a question. The question is, the whole idea of name and fame, how can we overcome this? Well, let's see what we mean by name, and let's see what we mean by fame. There's a phrase I often like to use, you see. I'm humble and proud of it. This is a contradiction in terms. So it comes really back to this whole idea of what is the survival strategy we have when we are small. And you'll recognize this from notes that from certain previous courses that I've given you. So what is the childhood background that I personally have, which is developing a sense of individuality that makes me grow and strive and move forward, a positive thing, but also acts as an obstacle because it involves pride ultimately. When mishandled, pride, it involves jealousy, it involves shame, it involves all kinds of things. These are various fetters that we have. And so really the question is, how do we overcome the ego? Now, I mentioned this in previous talks, of course, but I'll try and change it a little bit to be a little bit more specific to this question of name and fame. There are varying degrees of name and fame that we desire, because there are some people who want more of it and some people who want less of it. So it means that there could be a little bit of subtlety involved. Let us take a simple example. Let's say that you do well at work and you're given some praise. Now don't forget, praise and blame, these are pairs of opposites. They can be viewed as pairs of opposites. When we're praised, we puff up and say, well, that was nice, thank you so much, give me more. and the ears get nicely flattered by praise. But blame, we physically shrink, we enter into a kind of shrunken mode physically, mentally. Somebody blames us, or somebody criticizes us, somebody aims at us, then we somehow feel that we are miserable. In fact, the whole key in education is essentially giving person praise where praise is due and not giving them blame, but rather giving some corrective action. You put it in a sporting context, coaching for improvement. We can coach somebody for improvement, and we can give lash praise on a person, let us say a child. A child will thrive on praise, and will welcome coaching for improvement. Even if you phrase it in this way, what do you think you can do better? Even in businesses, this is the best way of managing people. When you manage somebody, you try to highlight the things that went wrong, went well, and coach the things for improvement. I mentioned that the World Cup, Rugby World Cup was on. How do you think a good coach manages a team? By shouting at them, by bringing them down? Not at all. By praising them when there is a victory, and by coaching for improvement where there is maybe an error or a need for a mistake. Come on, you're good at heading but not so good at passing. So come, let's put it in the football context. So come, let us now practice. We practice and practice. We'll give a professional coach and guidance and see how we can improve. Patanjali, in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, that deals very specifically with this question of ego, because it is Patanjali that defines what is ego. Ego is the mistake of the seer mixing itself up with what is seen, what is observed. The Bhagavad Gita also gives us the clue. What we do, there are two kinds of ways of handling it, but primarily we have to see the self in all beings and all beings in the self. Now, we have to give some simple examples for that. Supposing somebody lends me some money and says, look, do what you want with this money, but I do require it back. It's just a loan, but see what you can do with it, and I'll be back in 1 month's time. Now, the example is derived actually from the Christian Gospels, because Jesus tells a story like this. A few coins given, and the landowner comes back, and he has 3 servants, and he's given coins to each one. And he says, well, what did you do? He says, well, I buried it, and now here it is. And the other one, what did you do? Well, I kind of spent it all. I'm sorry, but I still owe you. And the next one, I doubled it, and I'm giving it back to you. Of course, that last one will be retained as a proper employee. Did you increase the investment, and then did you give it back to the owner? So when we decide that we are no longer the owner of anything, that there is a presence, divine presence in everything, and that inner presence is the owner, not me, then immediately I will give up any kind of idea of name or fame. I won't boast, I did this for you, I did that for you, because the agency is really not in me. I'm always using borrowed things. I'm using borrowed energy from sunlight. I'm using that as transmuted into energy through carbohydrates and plants and so on. And I myself am not responsible for digesting my food or renewing the cells or pumping my heart or mobilizing the lungs. Of course, I can take some responsibility. If I am in a stressed mode, then I can slow the heart rate, and I can do that by systematic breathing, a certain pranayama. I can do that by studying myself, by changing my thought, and immediately my blood pressure goes down, heart rate becomes nicely controlled. My neurological state becomes more even, more balanced, more steady. All of this I can do, but fundamentally, the second by second input is not mine. I cannot say this is my life. I can only say that there is some investor of life in me, and is not a bad investor. Because if it's a bad investor, then the life would be withdrawn. So I cannot claim anything for my own. A good investment means that I have a specific purpose to do. If I use this word I can say that this individuality is specifically designed to unfold a specific purpose, and that has to melt into a team, a world team. And coming back to the example of the Rugby World Cup, the significant team that acts as a team and knows what the other players are doing, that becomes a successful team. But they also have to have the will and the drive. And yes, you may say that after victory, they may own success. They may do that. Of course, all analogies have some flaws in them. But what gives the drive? What gives the willpower? What gives the energy? What gives the current? You see, these are the questions that we need to ask. Who is the owner of this organic system that we call the human body? And who is the owner of this inner, subtle series of thoughts and feelings that we call the mind? Who owns this driving force? And who owns this body? Who owns the engine in a car and who owns the car itself? You can use that simile. Well, it's the one that's driving it, and I can't say it's me. Even when I sleep, sorting out, so-called. So we have to rephrase our language a little bit. When I sleep, we can rephrase. That is, when the waking state disappears, and when the dream drama comes on board, and when all of that is gone, and there is a nebulous peace, what is there that cognizes it? It is the observer. And the observer really is the witness and the owner also. It is the thinker, it is the knower, it is the witness, it is the enjoyer. That is my true nature. Now, how is it we don't recognize it? It is because of this mistake of the seer, the witness, identifying with the seen. That is the mechanism, or in this case, the organic mechanism that we call the body. And then somehow we shift to the language, we say, my body, and we shift it along again and say, me, I. So how to reverse this mistake? Well, we have to, these talks and these question and answer sessions and so on, study of scripture continuously, and practicing the presence of this divine in such a way that we recognize the true entity with a penetrating vision beyond and behind everything, moving progressively from the machinery, if you will, and the mechanism to the one that is, by virtue of its presence, moving all things. It doesn't move it directly, doesn't move anything directly, but indirectly its presence. And then you might say, well, what is the energy that's moving it? If it's not moving anything, what is the thing that is moving it? Well, it is divine energy reflected through certain conditions. So if I'm a fireman and I put a fire out, and then I say, oh, please give me a medal because I put the fire out. If that fireman is talking to a philosopher will say, well, wait, did you actually put the fire out? Or did the water do it? And you simply held it and directed, please go this way, please go that way. What we call meditation is simply guiding a current. Lord, please flow this way, please flow that way. Your grace here, please, your grace there, please. The personalized light bulb cannot stand up and say, oh, I beam light and you can see. I am responsible for you being able to read something, or am I responsible for you not stumbling over something in the dark? I take personal responsibility. Yeah, but what about the electrical current behind you? The electrical current behind you with this adapter. So now we come to a principle called upadis. What is the ego now? It is an upadi. It is a limiting adjunct. That it is a manifesting agent, or that is a manifesting adapter. You put an adapter called a light bulb. You join it to the electrical current, and lo and behold, it beams light. It's not the adapter that does it, nor is it the electrical current alone that does it. The conjunction of these two do it. Now, what are these adapters then? The ego is an adapter. If the ego is an adapter, where is name and fame? It's putting the wrong, it's putting praise on the wrong entity. It's putting blame on the wrong entity. It is taking praise by the wrong entity. It is taking blame by the wrong entity. So what is the true identity? We have to get used to this idea. And we get used to this idea through repetition of words. We think in words. This is a principle of nama-rupa, that there is a name and there is a form. The form is what we see. There is a form. A form is called a body. A form is called the mind. The conjunction of these two, for convenience sake, for passport purposes, I call I with a certain identity. But then the subtle form of that will be the idea about myself, the idea about I. When somebody says me, or when somebody mentions somebody else, immediately a picture forms in the mind, and we identify it in a subtle way. It's not that the person has got into the brain, something like that. There is a subtle replication of it. That is called nama, a word. And that word, therefore, and that concept all go together. You cannot separate words and concepts. These are integrally linked. These are two sides of the same coin. You can try it out. I often say, you see, at these various workshops, you see, think of whatever you do not think of an elephant. Does anybody now say they didn't think of an elephant? Immediately the word produces this picture of elephant. Word and concepts have to go together. There's no other way. And this is our mechanism of getting over these obstacles. So instead of saying I and me and mine, you make a re-registration. You change your language. Instead of saying somebody is an awkward person, let's say in the workplace, you change the language. And when you change the language, you change the perception. So if there's an awkward person in front of you, you see, ah, Lord, there you are there, dressed up, because I don't recognize that you are the body, or that you are the behavioral personality. I recognize that you are the divine person of the universe. You are the immortal Atman, the immortal self. In philosophical language, that's how we put it. Because when you strip away everything, that is the only self that remains. Now, it's much more useful, probably, for most people to use your creative imagination and see the Lord of the universe standing there, or the Mother of the universe standing there, dressed up in this way. Because what else could there be there? if you say that there's this one entity, you say that all the names and forms are manifestations of this, like waves being formed into various particular objects in space and time called people and places and happenings. If that's your point of view, well then you can only register this to the divine. There's nobody else you can register this to. When as soon as we see these individualities, we make the mistake. And as long as we see the individualities, we include ourselves as an individual and we take on name. That is, we take on a registration of ownership. So this is the name part of it. And then the fame part of it, name and fame. Now, we surely must recognize our vulnerability in this, that there is a kind of cycle of happiness and unhappiness, that from a personal point of view, when somebody praises me, I get inflated. When somebody blames me or criticizes me, then I get deflated. And that creates a psychological condition of unhappiness. And unhappiness doesn't stay there. It moves on to the body. And every single cell of the body vibrates with misery or delight. It's up to you how you construct your thought. So it's much better to look at it in a proper way and to rehearse it constantly. At the end of the day, a good practice is to take on all the activities of the day and make them devoid of ownership and offer them to the supreme principle which is there, whatever that is to you, because that is the true owner. Just as the person who went away, lent money and so on, and came back, the best thing is, not only did you give me this energy or this gift of life, and this gift of all the resources around it, including supporting people, including supporting events, what will I do with it? I will double it, at least double it, increase it tenfold. I will do my best with this energy available to me and give it back to you. Increased. That would be a wonderful formula. That means that we would be highly efficient in whatever we do. Efficiency being a certain amount of energy going in. You can't get more energy out than what you put in, but at least the output is greater than the input. Output and input together is whatever the sum total of the energy is. And we could make it the other way. We could make it maximum input, minimum output. But it's much better to do it the other way. When you look at how engines perform, for example, or motors perform and rate the efficiency, efficiency really means that there is more output than input, or the maximum output that you can get with the minimum input, and it balances off. So we have to do the same thing in our own life. That's the one benefit of it. The second is that we become devoid of all stress. All our difficulties disappear when we don't have to own anything. You can say, well, don't you even own your mistakes? Yes, you can admit to your mistakes, no doubt, but then you have to shift things and say, yes, but there was some corrective action. It's like this coaching thing. There was coaching for improvement, and the improved thing is what I'm offering. And at the end of the day, yes, things didn't go so well, but things went well. Those things I offer you together with everything. And tomorrow I resolve, I'll give you a better offering. I'll increase your energy tenfold and give it back to you. the owner. But it means that we have to revise our language. Instead of saying my body, we can say it is my earth car. These are familiar things that I'm giving you. I always give you the same things. My earth car, or the Lord's housing or temple, the divine housing and temple that I learned to clean on the outside, and I clean it on the inside. And then inside is the divine sitting room, and I clean it through prayer and japa and meditation. Doing this, I'm cleaning the temple and not owning it. I'm not saying my body. I'm not saying it's me or mine. I'm not saying it's my mind. I'm saying it's the divine sitting room. That's all. The reception room, the inner garbha. And in meditation, that's what we go through. We disown the body. We disown the mind. We make the mind a realm in which the divine sits. It's called, systematically, the cave of the heart. That is dark, but when we recognize that inside it is the illuminating factor that we call our own divine self. Once we go backwards, as it were, devolve, as it were, go into more and more subtle areas until we arrive, as it were, at pure being. That is the true I. And that true I doesn't take responsibility because it also doesn't act. It simply shines. And its rays, its manifestations through adapters comes out as body, mind. Not only body, mind, but also the sun, the moon, also the clouds, also the sky, also the earth. All of these are adapters. The mind is an adapter. There's a current which is there, and an adapter is put there, and then it manifests from there. So all of these things that we see throughout the whole universe are all made from manifesting adapters, adapting one beaming sunlight. And everything that we call in our individual life is comprised of manifesting adapters. That means there's a beaming thing behind it that beams through these adapters. It is only when we put these adapters toward it that we say, I am alive, there is breath, the heart is pumping, the hand is moving. All of these are useful adapters. The ego is a useful adapter, but it has no business claiming ownership or actor. Actor-profit complex, that has to go. Now, the question implies also, yeah, but it's not easy, but I never said it was easy. But like anything worthwhile, we progressively increase these ideas. It does require new ways of thinking. It requires getting out of our habitual view of things and making a revalued assessment. And when you study all the scriptures, when you study the Upanishads, you will see that we are hit from this side, from that side, in unusual thinking. Whenever I give a workshop, I always, well, not always, but often point out, particularly to newcomers, I don't expect you to agree with me, but I expect you to shift your thinking, to think differently. You should think differently. Because it is only when you think differently and get out of a conventional view of something that some kind of opening occurs, that we call inspiration, of course, or a recognition or an aha moment or realization. You've experienced it in your own lives. We have various expressions. Oh, the penny just dropped, you can say. In other words, there was a real understanding of something. An aha moment, that's it. Your eyes go wide, your mouth goes open. You say, that's it, that's it. So these internal moments, this is what we call revelation. This is what we call meditation. Meditation, a progressive journey inwards till the final aha moment comes. Each step is a revelation. So let's not attribute all this glory to ourselves. Let us rather attribute all this glory to the divine current that sits behind everything. Now, when you register the current flowing everywhere, divine grace flowing through everything, and these are familiar things I've told you many times, through all hands, but they're all scripture based. Through all hands, all arms, all eyes, we find these phrases in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. We find these things in the Bhagavad Gita also. So,
Swami,
through 1,000 heads. Sorry, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, I haven't got to formulate it exactly, but when you're meditating, say like in the cave of the heart, the practice of the Ishtadevata in the cave of the heart, then what's the relationship between, is there a relationship there between the Ishtadevata as the source of delight, as the source of consciousness, and the meditator?
Yes, it's a good question. So, you see, as you go progressively inward, the idea of a meditator becomes less. You see, in meditation, if there's any first person singular, you can't really call it meditation.
Yes, that's like, so there's a sense of dissolution, or I can't really verbalize it properly, but it's like
devotional meditation, okay, is practicing the presence of the divine, where there is that separation, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's what you're referring to. So there is a relationship, no doubt, between the Ishtadevata and the devotee. But then you see, at the final moment, there is emergence, because that nearness becomes oneness.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's that sense of that, like,
yeah,
is the boundary melting or something? And
yes, exactly. The boundary melts by itself, because the full glory dissipates any differentiation. But the sweetness of the devotion, you see, in the devotional meditator, the sweetness is there. And the sweetness is also enhanced, but even the sweetness dissolves into the bliss.
mm-hmm.
And so it's a bit like, you see, a conversation between Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, or Narayan as he was then. And Narayan says, well, and you can imagine now a pot of honey, let us say. He says, I like to teeter on the edge and dip my tongue in. You see, that's a kind of image which is there. And Ramakrishna laughed, why don't you fall in? You're afraid of falling in, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you fall in and immerse yourself in the full nectar of the bliss? And so there is that moment where it's a bit like taking a dip in the Irish Sea, I suppose, you see. You dip your toe in first and you say, well, that's okay, not too bad. Then the foot goes in, not too bad at all. Now we have to put it in the summer day context, in summer context, see. And then you go in and then you immerse the whole thing. And then when somebody calls you, half an hour later, no, I'm still enjoying my swim.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the point. It's to dive into the ocean, no doubt. But there's no doubt to do it progressively is one way. Those who are braver will take the dip straight away.
Yeah.
But
do you not, if you start with a devotional feeling,
yes,
is there some sort of thing that there's a sort of, you're losing the devotion when as it goes to merging?
No, not at all.
Not explain. I can't articulate this well.
Yeah. Okay, so just using the language that you used, The devotion increases, but you see, the separation decreases.
Mm.
The devotion increases, the feeling of the devotion increases. After all, when we experience an ecstatic moment, and so it goes from bhakti to parabhakti, see, and to prema, prema, parabhakti. You see all of these ecstatic bliss.
Mm.
Now, we could stay in the ecstatic bliss, but the corresponding movement toward us, that's what takes over, and we have no responsibility for it.
Yeah. So it's a sort of letting go, even if it starts with devotion. It's
Yes.
just as a soft letting go.
Yeah.
You let the wave take you.
Yes. And put it in the language of the gunas. So even sattva will bind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That means that even if I enjoy the bliss so much or enjoy the ecstasy so much, that can also be a final boundary, you see, that stops the
Yeah. Yeah.
fullness
Just an
of the bliss.
enjoyer. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So enjoy the journey is a good thing, is a good formula. But then there is a destination, of course.
Yeah.
And the destination is worth more, is more blissful than the journey. But the
Yeah.
journey itself is blissful, there's no doubt.
Mm.
Absolutely. You see the different types of meditation we have. We can broadly describe it as impersonal and personal meditation. For most people, personal meditation or the path of devotion, that is practicing the presence of the divine. What is the devotional meditation? Practicing the presence of the divine. And then we can apply the definition given by Joel Goldsmith. And the definition is that a song of gratitude that God is here, God is now, God is love. This is the devotional kind of meditation. Now, the other one is a little bit more difficult. The other one, belonging to the jnani, let us say, there we'll still have to have images, we'll still have to have objects, but they may be amorphous objects, the sky, or infinite water, or something of that nature. And this is deemed as external kind of meditation. There's internal meditation also. And so, but it's to take symbols and forms still there. But now it is more of an impersonal nature. And that is a little bit more difficult because you still require creative imagination. But of course, it depends on, all meditation depends on how you performed, as it were, how you operated and what you viewed and what you thought and what you felt in your normal, average waking life, in your waking realm. And that determines the quality and the approach of your meditation, of course. So we jump the gun very often when we talk about meditation. Patanjali very usefully gives us 8 steps, and people want to jump to the 7th. Actually, people actually want to jump to the 8th. Let me go into samadhi. No, you can't just do that. But I don't understand. There's instant coffee and there's instant tea and there's.
But as I understand it, Swami, isn't the 8 steps are progressive, and that the first 2 really are providing the moral basis.
The 8 steps are progressive, absolutely. Yes.
So you've got to have the moral basis first.
Yes, of course.
And
Concentrate.
the third is the physical, that you can sit basically,
yes,
long enough to without your body impinging on how you're trying to focus your mind.
Yes, for several reasons. According to the yogis, one is that you expect some physiological changes that has to be accommodated by the way you sit.
Yeah.
That is all to do with the various nervous system, and the nervous system has to be calm. And one practical way of doing this, by the way, is to put your awareness on different parts of the body.
Yeah.
This all comes under the heading of asana.
Yeah.
Of course, if you want to sit for long periods of time, you see, all the practices of Hatha Yoga, the ones that are contained in the classical texts, are all aimed at a suitable position, sitting position for meditation.
Mm.
The rest are mentioned, for subtlety and physical health and so on. So all of that is mentioned. But the ones that are most described in graphic detail will be Virasana, Padmasana, and all those kind of things. Some quite complex. But the idea is that the spine is erect and that you can sit for prolonged periods without the body disturbing you. And if the body does disturb you, part of the asana practice will be, well, I have everything arranged nicely. I preconditioned it through keeping care of my physical body.
Yeah.
And now what is happening, and that is taken care of with the stage of niyam, that is purifying my body,
Yeah.
externally, internally, and purifying the mind. And still, I find that there is a pain in my left knee, let's say.
Mm.
Then you take all your awareness and put it exactly there.
Mm.
Soon you'll find that you are aware of the sensation there, and the pain aspect of it is gone, but the awareness is remaining. And doing that stabilizes the mind as well. So in part of the practical meditation exercises, you'll see that as part of the asana, it is to as one exercise is to shift your awareness to different parts of the body. And the overall technique about this leads you to what is called yoga nidra. Now, when people do the yoga exercise, typically they go into shavasana, corpse posture, and then you relax every part of the body. And one method is to name the parts of the body and make them relax and so on and so forth, all of those kinds of things. Well, actually, this comes under the heading of asana and leads you also very directly to a withdrawal of the mind, what we call pratyahara. And when pratyahara is complete, we can call this yoga nidra. In other words, it's like having a whiteboard or a blackboard with all kinds of things on it, and you rub it all out. So it's all clear. The mind is nicely calm, nothing disturbing it. Physically, mentally, nothing.
And with pranayama, then that takes care of itself.
It takes care of itself. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
See,
And
we have to understand that pranayama is control of prana energy.
Yeah.
Well, is your thought energy? Yes. Is there energetic things going on in the mind? Yes. Is there physical energy going on? Yes. Is it stabilizing control? Is the nervous system containing energy, nervous energy? Yes. Is it controlled by the flywheel, as Vivekananda puts it? The flywheel, namely the motion of the lungs. Yes. You can either use the lungs to stabilize that, or you can do it the other way and stabilize the thought and see what the lungs do. They're already stable.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of vacating everything, as it were, is a preparation for you now to insert something of your own, a kind of internal journey, canalizing your thought in a specific direction that becomes revealing, that becomes enlightening, and uncovers all the other layers. This is called dharana, or concentration, until you get to a point where there is a flow of thought. That flow of thought, that is one thought in the mind as a flow, is called dhyana, meditation. Never mind about samadhi, that will take care of itself.
And how does bhakti meditation map onto the meditation with an object and meditation without, or is this
Well, firstly, firstly,
pranayama
firstly,
and yasam?
the bhakta will be putting themselves in the divine presence. Would be registering all of these instruments, coming back to the original question, coming back, renouncing ownership of the body and the mind and any effects of those instruments.
Mm.
So there's an atmosphere of renunciation that will take place to start with, and being in the presence.
And is that
Now,
is
this is why in the ashram we keep a light burning. You must have noticed there's a lamp continuous.
yeah.
I introduced that lamp because that is a symbol. There's a divine presence actually there, actually present, in reality present. So that is continuously burning, and you'll see that Catholic churches and so on, they do that. They keep that light on because the divine presence is there. That means when you enter into the atmosphere of your meditation space, then immediately you're walking into a divine presence. And that presence is tangible and real. And you cannot proceed, in my view anyway, until you feel the tangible presence of the divine before you proceed. Then it's a mutual journey. It's a journey together. And what you're doing then is you're saying, okay, now I'm installing you in the divine heart.
Yeah.
When I install you there, I now am with this understanding that the light that was there, the lamp that was there in your meditation space is now in your heart. And that lamp, that light of lights in your heart, that's the light, of course, when Patanjali describes various meditation themes, if you will, this is one of the things, you see.
Yeah.
And it's not the only thing. Many things.
Doesn't he make a distinction between, I'm probably going to mispronounce these terms, but samprajanata,
yes,
and asan, and the negation of that. How does that map to the bhakti approach? Does the bhakti approach?
It's exactly the same. The only difference is the object of the bhakti is the chosen ideal that is the highest reading to the human mind of the absolute and is near and dear, is psychologically appropriate for us, and is the revealed divine aspect that we can personally relate to, talk to, listen to. It's a reality. It's as much a reality as any other reality, more so because of its subtlety. And so in the evolution of the whole universe, that's what happens. What we call cosmic mind is the personal God. And if you can get that far into the cosmic mind, if you can sit there with your chosen ideal, with your personal God, then you have reached essentially the highest state of bhakti. And then that merges then into the more amorphous aspect where properties are revealed, where you feel the properties. It's about feeling.
Yeah.
And then ultimately you get to this merging with the divine.
When you say the properties, Swami, do you mean the attributes of omnipotence and omnipotence?
Yes,
and
because the cosmic mind knows everything, knows all. What we call God knows everything. There's nothing that it does not know. It sees everything. There's nothing it does not see. It is intimately a guiding helmsperson It guides your light. It's the lamp that lights your way. It is the lover of the beloved. It is that single one without a second. It is that entity which manifests creatively everything else. So it is the creator. So it is omnipotent. And that is reflected in, ultimately, in the absolute Brahman, the absolute, because we have Sat, which comes out as existence, Chit, which comes out as intelligence, and Ananda, which comes out as joy and happiness. So omnipotence comes out in this way. Omniscience comes out in this way.
Mm.
Omnipresence comes out in this way. Oh, well, we have exceeded our hour, so thank you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om